Oh, I know. It's going to be exciting workshop. Hello. Yeah, come on in. Get yourself a station here.
Yep, so
We're going to do a little slideshow first, and then we'll get into the
anywhere that there's
workshop.
a gray bin, you're welcome to set yourselves up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll start by introducing myself. My name's Nigel Saunders. I've been growing bonsai for 30 years now. So I started at age 30, and I'm turning 60 this year, so I can't believe it. And the time has just gone by like, it's like raising kids, you know. So tonight's workshop, it's on Tigerbark Ficus. So before we start, I want to ask everyone about themselves, because I want to know who you are, where you're from, and how you got into bonsai, and what appeals to you, and that kind of thing. So we'll start here.
I'm Eric.
Eric?
I've been into bonsai for about a year, a COVID hobby.
Yeah. A lot of people started during COVID.
Yeah. So my dad passed away about a year and a half ago.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Thanks. Just kind of stumbled upon Peter Chan's videos actually.
Wonderful person, Peter Chan.
Yeah, his videos along with yours have been by far like the most knowledge I've gained, and your daily uploads are the best part of the day.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I got into it about a year ago, and I've just been collecting trees non-stop.
Awesome. And where are you from?
Ajax.
Ajax, okay.
Yeah.
So you've come from afar.
Yeah, it was about an hour and a half. Wasn't too bad, but.
Oh, well, welcome. And
yeah, I'm
and
excited.
Eric, right?
Yes.
And
I'm
next.
Marg, and I'm from Hamilton.
What's your name, sorry?
Margaret.
Margaret. Okay,
Yeah.
Margaret.
And I'm really not into bonsai yet. I
Okay.
have a couple of them at home. My friend here is the one who's gotten me into it. And I have a ginseng stick at home, and I know I've got it trim it down, and I've been looking at it, and looking at it, and looking at it, and looking at all these videos, and I really need some knowledge.
Oh, you should have brought it in tonight.
But I live close to this place, so I
Okay.
come often.
Okay. Well, maybe next workshop, if it's okay with Mark, we could work on that a little bit. I don't know. Some nurseries don't like you bring plants in from outside because
No.
you might be bringing in
Right,
insects or
exactly.
something. So I don't know. We can do it in the parking lot. And well, welcome, Mark. And nice to have you. And next,
Yeah, I'm Barb,
Barb.
and I'm
You're the
from
one who got
Hamilton.
her into it.
Yes. She's the instigator.
Yeah, you're the.
Yeah,
Couples.
and well, I've been coming to tropical expressions actually for about 15 to
Wow.
20. I don't know, how long have you guys been open?
In this location for about 12 years.
Okay.
12 years.
So at least 12 years, but I think before that.
Yeah.
And bonsai, I've always been interested in everything Asian.
Yeah. It's a
Yeah.
fantastic culture, isn't it?
Japanese in particular,
Yeah.
and I've been growing houseplants for about 40 years. And I got into bonsai, I don't know, just seeing pictures of trees and thinking, oh my gosh, I want that tree.
Yeah.
And then I started playing around about 20 years ago, but unfortunately my skills are not great. I'm what I call kamikaze gardener, and I'm one of those people that chops everything.
Yep.
And then I chop before I think. So this is so exciting to be able to do, and I've been following you for about 4 years.
Oh, thank you very much. And what's your name again?
Barb.
Barb.
Yeah.
Barb, Margaret, Eric. I'm never going to remember this.
No.
Forgive me. I can remember the names of all the plants, the people. I don't know what it is with me.
Picture us as trees.
Back here now.
My name's Mike.
Mike?
I've been doing bonsai as a hobby for a little more than 10 years.
Wow.
I started because I've always enjoyed houseplants and plants in general, and I lived in a condo for a long time.
Yeah.
And doing some research, it seemed that bonsai was a good fit because I could take them with me. And
Yeah, and they're small and.
I didn't have a yard, so it was a good stopgap until I moved, and eventually I moved here to Hamilton.
Yeah.
And so now I have a garden as well, so it takes away some of my time and attention from the bonsai, but I still enjoy it.
Like vegetable gardening or?
Oh yeah, we have
Yeah.
a major vegetable garden,
Nice.
raised beds and fruit trees and a big raspberry patch that we take care of.
Well, fruit trees and bonsai are very similar. You know, you're pruning them for structure, and
Absolutely,
there's
yeah.
definitely a crossover there.
There is, and a lot of knowledge translates, and just horticultural,
Yeah.
mechanical techniques like cleaning your tools when you're pruning and things
Yeah.
like that. Those are tough lessons because I think I killed one or two trees by using dirty tools on them.
Yeah.
early on, anyways.
And where are you from?
I'm from Hamilton.
Hamilton, okay.
It's actually only maybe a kilometer from me. So,
Okay, on top of the mountain.
Yes, yeah. Anyways, I'm looking really forward to the class. A big fan.
And what was your name, Mark, was it?
Pardon me?
What was your name?
Mike.
Mike. Mike.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, welcome. That's nice to have you here.
Yeah.
And next.
My name's Chris, and
Chris.
my friend Mike here got me into bonsai.
All right.
Yeah, there you go, exactly. Yeah, I remember that condo. Because I walked in for the first time, and there's a bunch of trees, maple trees, things like that, growing in the windows, and they had like rocks tied to the branches to keep them from growing up and growing certain ways. So I said, that's pretty cool. I want to try that
Yeah.
too.
He's pretty experimental.
Yeah,
Well,
I
that's-
guess I'm kind of at that stage right now where I'm just experimenting.
Oh, that's cool. That's the thing about bonsai is there's something to appeal to everyone. Like, I know people that like growing root over skulls, and you know, there's.
Yeah.
You don't have to stick to traditional Japanese bonsai. You can do whatever appeals to you.
Yeah, I kind of like just walking through the forest, and if there's something like kind of this big, I might,
Yeah.
as much as you're not supposed to, might pluck it up out of the ground and try to stick it in a pot and see what I can.
Yeah. I remember once I felt really guilty taking this little spruce tree out of this forest lot in the city, and it developed into a really nice tree, and then I went back to see if there's any others, and the whole place was bulldozed.
There you go.
Stupid me, I should have taken more. But, well, welcome. And what was your name again?
Chris.
Chris. Mike and Chris. And next, the couple.
My name's Eric, this is my wife Emma. We're from London.
Emma.
We watch videos, obviously.
Thank you.
Like that, so thanks for daily uploads, like Eric said. They're a big part of our day. We look forward to the live we can get on them. So.
Awesome. Well, when I got into bonsai, like YouTube videos would come like once a month from some of the channels, and I found it kind of frustrating, and you never saw the same trees again. So I like, if I was starting on bonsai, I would appreciate some daily uploads and stuff, even if it's me weeding trees or something silly like that. But I try and, you know, if you're a diehard enthusiast, it's nice to see something new each day, even if you skim through it or whatever, you know. So that's the reason. I started during COVID actually to do more daily uploads because everyone said, oh, it's really nice, we're stuck indoors, and it's nice to have something to watch each day, and you have more time to watch things like that. So I noticed that my channel subscriptions went up during COVID, and so that was the only good thing about COVID for me, I guess. All right, well, welcome everyone, and I want to thank Mark and Madeline. They, Mark owns Tropical Expressions, and Madeline's the manager, and is that right? Yeah. And they're the ones who, they approached me and to put together a workshop, and I've always wanted to put on workshops. It's just, I'm like stuck up in the boonies. Jay, this is Jay. I'll introduce him. Jay is fairly new to bonsai, but not, he's getting experience very quickly. He has a YouTube channel called Blue Jay Bonsai. I don't know if you guys have seen it,
I've
but
seen that one.
it's
I've
very
seen you.
entertaining.
I've seen
Yeah,
you.
he publishes every Saturday
Yeah.
usually.
I'm in the Toronto
Some-
Club and the Kitchener
and the
Waterloo
Kitchener
Club,
Waterloo
so that
Club.
really helps to accelerate. Plus having Nigel as a friend and mentor with some hands-on stuff really accelerates your learning. So this is
Wow.
the same idea here.
Yeah, so welcome Jay, and check out his channel, it's pretty cool. He does a good channel. So we'll start with our presentation. I debated how long to make this slideshow. It's more inspirational slideshow than actual facts and that, because you're here for a workshop, not to be lectured for 2 hours tonight. So here's what we're working with tonight, Ficus microcarpa, tigerbark. Microcarpa means small leaves, is it?
Small fruit.
Small fruit, that's right, small fruit. So they get little figs on them. They won't be fertile because they have to have a wasp that goes inside the fruit. The flowers are actually inside the fig. And there's only a certain species of wasp that is the right size to go through a little hole in the fruit. It goes in there, it fertilizes the plant, the fruit inside, it dies in there, and then all the little ones hatch eventually and eat the fruit from the inside out, and then they fly away and reproduce.
Oh, wow.
So it's a very, yeah, if you ever, on YouTube, there's, I think it's called Ficus, the Queen of Trees. It's a fantastic documentary to watch. So that's what we're dealing with, Ficus microcarpa. Tigerbark is just a variety. Now, there's thousands of fig tree species in the world, and they say the botanists even have trouble classifying them all because there's crossovers and hybridization and that. So it's a species that's known for bark like this. It looks stripish like a tiger or spotted, and so they grow into giant trees. They're one of the largest ficus trees you'll see, and they're often wider than the height of the tree. So for me, that's something important when you're growing bonsai, to get your tree to be wider than it is tall. It gives that tropical tree look and the umbrella shaped canopy. Very rare not to see a mature ficus without that big tropical umbrella. So that's generally the style you want to go for, but it's not limited to that. You can style your ficus any style you want. So ficus are famous for their flowing aerial roots and the branch structure. What a ficus does as it matures, if you have a 90-degree branch coming off, as they mature, they start flowing. The growth always takes the best route to everything, so it tends to smooth out everything. So that's one of the appeals of ficus, is these, it looks like a melted candle, the wax dripping down or something. They're very smooth and flowing and interesting. So you'll often see tourists standing beside ficus as a backdrop because they're so cool looking. They're just naturally neat looking. They also drop aerial roots, which is another feature of ficus. In a humid environment, you'll see roots coming off the trunk, and they'll eventually grow longer and longer and touch the soil, and then they thicken up and they become, these are called prop roots. So what they do is, they do two things. They anchor themselves into the ground. The roots on a ficus, they start off skinny like a normal root, and once they get under the ground, they become like a ginseng root or a potato root, or what's another word for it? Tuber. Something like that. They enlarge and they actually anchor the tree into the ground, and that's a defense mechanism for hurricanes because they're normally in a tropical area. So normally, most trees will tip over in a hurricane, but ficuses rarely do because they're anchored into the ground. Also what happens is, these roots, once they hit the ground, they actually start shrinking, and it'll pull, it's like tensioning cables. It'll actually pull the branches down, and that's another defense mechanism. It makes them super stable in the ground, almost impossible to tip over in a hurricane. So you can get aerial roots off your aerial roots. You can also plant aerial roots and they'll sprout foliage off them. It's a little trickier, but, and yeah, so they're just beautiful looking. It's, it makes them look exotic. Like here we are in Canada, you always want something that you can't have. And,
Did they grow into each other? Like that looks
Yeah.
like it's...
so they can fuse with each other. And there's trees that will just keep spreading. So they'll send out branches, drop aerial roots, it'll spread. There's one tree that takes up, I think it's like almost 5 acres of land from one single tree that just keeps spreading. So they're a real problem in some of the tropical areas because they grow on the sides of buildings. The roots will tear up sidewalks. They'll engulf things quickly. Like in the tropics, I've seen cars parked in, a car that needs work or something, they'll park it in the driveway and the roots will grow over it and it'll almost engulf it. And so they're a real problem. Florida is finding that out, that some of these ficus are kind of becoming a problem area in some cities and that, and they consider it a weed, and a lot of them are dug up. But here in Canada, we love them. So here's a nice picture of a mature ficus. When I think of a ficus, this is what I imagine: the huge umbrella canopy, aerial roots, the flared buttress trunk. It's just beautiful. Like, if I had a bonsai like that, I'd be happy. That's sort of my goal, is to develop something like that. And you can see there's one from Australia here. That's from the, I think it's the Australian National Collection. It's changed a lot since that picture, but I've seen it. Occasionally it pops up on the internet, and I've seen some updates. But a beautiful tree. It's got all the features of a full-size tree in a bonsai. And that tree in real life, the pot would be about this big, so it's a fairly big crown on it. So here's a ficus bonsai. This is a Taiwanese one. It has leaves in the one picture, and then they often display them without leaves so you can appreciate the branch structure. I've done both. I've had my ficus in a show where I've had one defoliated one year, and everyone goes, "Oh, why doesn't that tree have any leaves?" So no one appreciated the branch structure much. They just thought it was weird that a tree had no leaves. But yeah, it's just, so it just shows, you know, there's a nice looking ficus, and that's what it looks like, the branch structure underneath the foliage. Ficus bonsai are good trees for beginners, but they're very difficult to turn into a really outstanding bonsai because of the roots. They're difficult to work with because of those big thick potato roots. The trunks tend to smooth out and become boring looking as the tree gets older, so you have to always be growing aerial roots, either doing carving or something. You can see the trunk in this one that the fellow's working on. That's all manipulated to get the interesting features on it. You can see that root structure, how it's being split from one thick root into 1, 2, 3, 4 roots there. And there's techniques like this. So they're an easy tree to keep alive. They're a perfect tree to start off with. But to turn them into a really, you know, a world-class bonsai takes a lot of technique and a lot of dedication and skill. They're easy to grow but difficult to shape and keep, you know, looking really good. What else do I have here? It's rare to see a really good ficus. There are some that come from Florida. They naturally grow them down there, and they thrive down there. The colder climates, you can still do everything. It just takes longer because our growing season's so short. So, you know, whereas it takes me 5 years to develop a tree in the tropics, maybe they can develop in 1 or 2 years. Maybe. Now, I've had people email me from Australia. They say, "Your trees are growing way better than mine, and I'm in the perfect climate. What am I doing wrong?" And so, I don't know. I think my trees are going okay. I would say, you know, they're not growing as fast as they would develop in the tropics, but for our environment, they're doing quite well. Now, these ficus, the tigerbark, are good because there's ficus that grow in the mountains, which grow in cooler temperatures, less humidity, and then there's the same species grows in the tropics where it's hot and humid. So they can do well in our environment. You can leave them outside. I encourage you to put them outside in the summer. Leave them outside until the temperature is getting close to about 5 Celsius, which is way lower than anyone will ever recommend, but they can take it right down to that as long as they've been outside and they gradually get used to that temperature. They're good to about 5 degrees Celsius. Then overwintering them, you can either put them in the house in a warmer room where they'll suddenly wake up because they've had that cool period, or you can put them in a cool basement with grow lights and they'll just sit there dormant the whole winter, which is the method I prefer for 2 reasons. You get no insect problems at all. They just sit there dormant. It's cool. I keep them around 10 to 15 degrees Celsius in my basement. I have grow lights above it. They just sit there staying healthy. They don't grow at all. and there's no insect problems. And I only have to water them about once a week because they're not actively growing and it's cool and humid. And then
So I was gonna ask you about the humidity in your basement. Mine gets very dry. Do you miss them or?
I don't have to because the humidity in my basement it's very high. I have my basement divided into 2 sections. I close the door and the one section isn't heated and it stays really humid. And I don't have the furnace air coming into it. So that's why it's good. And yeah, that's the method I prefer. And then in spring, because they've been sitting there dormant under the grow lights, in spring they just go crazy. Like you'll get shoots this long, they just explode in growth. So if you prune them back before you put them outside, you defoliate them, and then you'll just see them grow in spring like you wouldn't believe because they've got all that energy. Over winter, what happens is photosynthesis turns water, carbon dioxide into starches in the plant. And then when a plant is dormant, those starches turn to sugar. So in spring, that's why maple trees have that sweet sap on them. If you tasted that same sap in fall, it wouldn't be sweet tasting at all. So that sap, that starch turns to sugar over the winter, and that's why they push out so much in spring. So, and all trees will do that. If they have a dormant period, it's really good for them. All that starch turns to sugar, and then they just explode in growth. So part of bonsai is managing growth. Yep.
When you bring your ficus out, if you didn't have a plant room, would you wait to let it be higher than 5 degrees? Or would you bring it out when it's the night temperature?
You can't, they won't take frost at all. So if they freeze, they're dead.
Yeah.
In spring, I bring them out on nice days and bring them all back in on cool nights. And you have to do that dance for a month, sometimes 2 months. And you've got to slowly acclimatize them to full sunlight. If they've been indoors, that's another reason. When I have them in the basement, they don't grow. So all those leaves on the tree are from full sun. So when I put them back outside, those leaves don't burn because they're used to full sun. Whereas if you have had it growing over the winter, all those leaves are indoor leaves. If you put them out in even the shade, sometimes they burn. So you'll burn all those leaves off the tree will suffer, and then gradually you'll get new leaves growing in. So the best thing to do is defoliate them, take them outside. You've got no indoor leaves, no leaves at all, and then it'll push out the outdoor leaves. And you won't have a problem with sunburn. Now you can still sunburn the branches, so you've got to be a little careful. Maybe an area that's not in full intense sun all day initially, where it gets some shade, and they'll do fine then. So that's a reason these ficus are good in our climate, is because you can get the full growing season, right from cool temperatures in spring to cool temperatures in fall. And if you have a greenhouse, you can extend that growing season by 2-3 months each side with an unheated greenhouse. And if you heat it, you can go, depending how much money you want to spend on heat, you can go all winter if you want, but ficus can be developed in large or small bonsai. So here's some examples of maybe some extremes. If you grow them small, it takes less time. Like if you took a tree like one of these and you cut it down to a stump, it's going to regrow new branches, and you're going to get something like that person's holding in their hand there very quickly. And then you just got to develop the branches. And within probably a year or 2, you're going to have a ficus that you could put in a show almost, because they develop that quick. The time in bonsai is developing big trunks, big roots, branches. The container size, that's a big factor. I have a ficus that I put in a container that's about this big around, this deep. It's over 20 years old, and the tree is this tall. I mean, it grows, I prune it back, it grows, and you can keep them as small as you want, or if you want to grow them, you can grow them as large as you want too. I know people who have ficus growing in like a sunroom in their house, and they have to defoliate it, cut it back hard to get it outside in the summer, and then it grows again, and to bring it back for the winter, they have to cut it all back down again. So there's large bonsai, you can get more details in it, like more roots, more branches, but there's a cost, there's practicality. My rule is I don't want anything that I can't fit in my car. Like, that's where I draw the line. There's no point having a tree if you can't repot it or move it or take it to a show or anything. And it's certainly not a tropical tree because you have to move them, you have to bring them in for the winter. You can't let them grow into like something that big. You just couldn't in our climate. Smaller trees, I would say the smaller the tree is, it takes more technique and more skill to make them look like a big tree when they're small. You're dealing with large leaves, you've got to reduce the leaf size, you got to get that branch structure. You have to be more vigilant with the watering. A small tree in a small pot, if it has 2 hours of sunshine, it can dry out. So you've got to be there to water and mist it. So generally, you know, a tree about this size is a good compromise between something that's fairly easy to take care of. So yeah, just keep that in mind. But the choice is yours, it says. You know, if you want to grow a large bonsai, there's nothing wrong with doing that. If you want to grow a super small one, you can do that too. Aerial roots. So this is one of the characteristics of a ficus. Now you see a lot of people in the tropics don't grow aerial roots on their ficus bonsai. I've asked them why that is, and they say it's just not something they do. Aerial roots will thicken up quickly, so to keep them in proportion, they're always cutting off the thick ones and regrowing them to keep them small. If you see this tree, if these aerial roots were like this diameter, it would look out of scale, out of proportion. So a lot of growers will also graft aerial roots on. They'll take a cutting and grow a really long root, and then they'll graft that cutting onto the branch, put that root in the soil, and they'll get aerial roots. These aren't grafted, but these ones might be. These could be cuttings that are grafted into the lower branches. Ficus are good at air layering, which is cutting off the bark, growing roots. They're good at growing from cuttings. You can grow them from root cuttings, which is a little more difficult, and they'll fuse. So you can, I've seen people that take 5 or 6 ficus, they'll group them together, bind them, and within here, maybe 5 to 10 years, they'll be, you won't tell it from one tree. They'll just all fuse and grow into each other. You've all seen those braided ficus in stores where they braid them, and some have golf balls in the middle, and so they fuse together naturally. So you can do a lot with a ficus if you're willing to, well, if you want to manipulate them, you can. That's kind of a line. I look at, it's a balance between manipulation and natural, the way the tree wants to grow. And somewhere in there, there's a balance to make a natural looking tree. I like to kind of have 50-50. I like the tree to have some say in the way it wants to grow, and then I have some say in what I want the tree to look like. If you just let it grow and do its own thing, you're not going to have a bonsai. So you've got to put some manipulation in. I've seen, I mean, you can wire your tree into some really bizarre and unnatural shapes, and it might appeal to some people. I prefer a tree, as I said, that looks natural, and so yeah, there's a balance between too much manipulation and too little. You got to find that balance. Aerial roots without a greenhouse, there are several ways you can grow them. They need humidity, so the bark on the trunk has to stay wet. So some people use a misting system that comes on a timer, just sprays the underside of the tree, the branches and the bark, and it'll just drop aerial roots naturally. In our climate in the summer, we usually get pretty humid summers, and you'll get some aerial roots forming naturally. I've had ones that drop down from branches, and this is without a greenhouse. This is just sitting out on the bench. You'll find as you get a canopy on your ficus, the area underneath stays humid. It's like a microenvironment. It stays humid, and natural aerial roots will form because it's in the shade of the sun. It doesn't dry out very quickly underneath, and you get natural aerial roots dropping. You can help them with sphagnum moss. You can put straws around them. You'll see the roots starting. You can put a straw, split a straw, put it around the root, and it'll grow down into the root. So there's a lot of different ways you can get aerial roots to grow in Canada without a greenhouse, but generally on their own they won't really grow much. You might get lucky and get one or two. Are there any questions on ficus bonsai that I haven't addressed, or I didn't talk about insect problems? You're going to get scale on them. And aphids is probably the only two insects you'll probably get on them.
I got one thing.
Yep.
I have a Ficus benjamina, and I've noticed that the sap isn't irritant. So that would be one thing.
Yes.
To mention, maybe if people aren't familiar with it.
Yes, that is true. If you have a latex allergy, does anyone have a latex allergy? I should have asked this before. That's a good point. Yeah, you'll get bumps on your skin if you're allergic to the latex. You gotta pick one.
We're looking
like that.
looking for the one that's most like this. It's not here.
And what I did as I was growing was I kept raising the
All you can
Walking,
do
this is your soil work.
You would just be yelling
So what
into
you can
your
do
own
is you
ears
can
because the face shield would literally reflect it back in your face. And they'd be like, what?
Groove all the way around the trunk, like you do with an air layer.
Yeah.
Well, they're already
And
not
you put-
listening, so.
A ring of plastic around your soil, and then you fill it in with soil. So this is all soil. And what will happen is you get all these roots
start to come from where
growing
it's
out
cut.
from, yeah, it's just like an air layer,
Yeah,
except
yeah,
it's sort of, we call it a ground layer.
Okay.
And you get all these roots, and then whatever roots are under here, you know, you can eventually cut off once these are all established. And then you can
Okay.
get in a fairly shallow pot,
Oh.
and you'll have, you know, from the top,
Great
you'll get
idea.
all these fine roots come out,
Yeah,
and it'll look just beautiful.
yeah.
And
Okay.
that's a typical technique they do with ficus
Oh, okay. That's great.
to improve the root system.
Yeah, okay.
If you want to reduce the height of the tree a bit, that's fine. You can take off the top and that, but I wouldn't do a whole lot of work to them tonight because you just wanted them to gain health and vigor. Now coming to the summer, as soon as you put these trees outside, they're going to explode. They grow like crazy outside with the sunlight. If you keep them indoors, you're always you'll keep them alive, but the foliage won't be as small, it won't be as tight, it won't be as dense. You just won't get as good a quality tree if you keep your tree indoors all the year round. We have two strong branches beside each other, and then another one here, and maybe one over here. So we only want to divide from 1 to 2. So in this case, you want to pick your best flowing branches. I like trees to flow. You don't have to do that. Some people like trees with sharp angles in them. It's more of a Chinese style. A flowing tree is maybe more of a natural style. So here I would probably pick one of these branches and remove one, so you don't have two branches growing from the same spot. And then you're dividing from 1 to maybe 2 up here. So that's what you could do on that tree.
You can plant that, right?
Yeah, you plant all your cuttings. Generally, cuttings won't grow in the winter time. If you plant them indoors, they need heat and good sunlight. In the summertime, if you prune your tree, just ordinary potting soil, put the pot out on the bench in the middle of summer, full sun, stick your cutting in, water it well, and 99% of the time they'll grow roots. They're really good at rooting. Let's take a look at this tree. So this branch is on the outside of a bend, but it goes right vertical. So here you have a shoot that's going to the outside. So in this case, I would prune it back to here for now.
Okay.
You'll probably get more stuff develop off here lower. Ideally, you know, you'd want your lowest branch to go a little more horizontal. But if you prune it off here, this is your new branch leader. It gets rid of this interference here, how the one branch is growing up into the other. You've got to leave a bit of a stub for dieback when you prune. You don't want to prune right to the new branch, otherwise it gets risky. You might lose that branch. So it's best to leave a bit of a pruning stub and then let this branch develop. And when that stub's kind of dry, then you prune it off. That goes with every bonsai. It's always good to leave a safety margin. Probably take this one off. This one has a bit of a flow to it. See how it kind of transitions up? And eventually this could be the branch leader. You prune it back so it kind of flows up. You want to develop a canopy on these trees where all the structure's coming up and forms a crown. So instead of horizontal branches, you're looking for more upright growth on them initially. As you get into the crown, then you're starting to look for branches that are horizontal and drooping eventually. I can draw you a sketch of that if you need it. I'll do that later. And then the apex is looking good on this tree. You've got like a single apex. Now here's a stub from previous pruning. We can clean that up. So make it smooth, a nice transition.
And you would leave all this?
We might do a little sorting out, just it's a bit congested there, just to keep the branches spreading out. And it might just involve removing some of the leaves too. So look at that. Here's a twisty one. Look at this. Wow.
Well, that's why I liked it, because
That
it's
is cool.
twisty.
Yeah, that's nice. Very nice.
But then look at this branch here and see how it,
I was going, yeah.
I like
It's-
it, but should it stay?
Definitely this one shouldn't. It's definitely on the inside of the curve here.
Yeah. But the one,
This one it's debatable. You've got, probably not, because you've got 3 branches, maybe 4 coming from one spot here.
yeah,
And you can see how it is thickening up here already.
yeah,
So you're going to have to reduce it. I like this branch is the nicest one, I think. It flows upwards. And then you've got a bit of dieback in the upper canopy,
Yeah.
but it is growing, so it's good. And then it divides from 1 to 2. You probably have to take the 3rd branch off. Divides from 1 to 2, which is good, and then you'll keep dividing to form the crown of your tree.
okay,
And these branches will have to grow up to eventually be integrated into the crown too.
okay, thank you.
So that's my take on that tree. A very nice tree. They're all nice.
Very cool.
This one. Let's have a look. Very nice. Now here's a case. The trunk starts off vertical and then it does the S-bend. There is the option of planting it on an angle. When you plant a tree on an angle, you can get, the trunk looks thicker because it's on the angle. So that's a possibility. It depends on what the roots are like. If you have a trunk coming down, the roots are all nicely radial, you put it on an angle, you're gonna have these roots sticking out of the soil and these buried too deep. So you can't do that. But it depends on the root system. Now here's one.
Leave you with that.
Here's our first tree with aerial roots on it.
So cool.
Very cool. Very cool. You can see how it adds to the tree. Now a lot of trees like this, there's a thing called a curtain fig, which is just the same tree as this. You'll see them in nature where in high humidity, every branch will drop roots down and it creates this wall of aerial roots. They call it a curtain fig, but it's not a special species of fig. And you've almost got that happening here. And I did this styling on an auction ficus on my channel. It's a Tigerbark microcarpa. And it started off as an S-shaped tree like this, and it just thickened over the years. And all these aerial roots dropped down, and you could barely tell it initially had an S-shaped trunk on it. The natural tree just wanted to flow down into the ground, and it became this amazing tree. So you've got this, these will thicken up really fast. So this is the tree I picked out. I picked it out because I could chop that whole thing off and grow a fairly straight tree if I wanted. I could put this in my plant room, which is pretty well like a greenhouse, high humidity, good sunlight. I got grow lights in there, and it would probably survive without any problems. But again, I think that would be my long-term solution for this tree. But for now, I don't think I would do that. I want to get the health in the tree. Our number one priority, I said, is to grow the root system, to get a healthy, good, fibrous root system. So that should be our priority. So we don't want to do a lot of work on the trees. We want to keep all our leaves, grow our roots. So, and then the long-term solutions will come next.
But maybe you want to continue that.
That's what I
So
said.
he
when
dragged you
I
along?
was thinking about it, I was like,
Well, you're into it now. No dragging.
Yeah, so what was there? I'm kind of just curious. So what was there? I'm kind of just curious. So
These two like that go like this. So he was talking about splitting from one branch to two branches. So in this spot, it splits into three.
So you've got your live channel coming up this side, so you can cut this back to about here. So if you come in like, I'll let you do it. You could probably come to about there and try and make it like so it kind of flows smoothly. When they heal, they will kind of, you get some callus there, which will push it out a bit. So generally you want to cut a little more and we'll go back to the right size.
Okay. And you said there were two that were growing
Opposite branches, yeah.
opposite. I kind of like this.
Doing all right. Trimming up some deadwood and just trying to take home a healthy tree, mainly. Keep it healthy.
How many trees do you have at home already?
I have probably 40 trees or so.
Not counting your fruit trees growing in the yard.
No, not counting the stuff that's in the ground. 40 pre-bonsai, I would say. I have maybe 4 or 5 trees that I would call a bonsai.
Good for you.
And then the rest would be pre-bonsai.
Awesome.
How's it coming?
Well, I took the one off from the inside.
Okay,
of the-
yeah, that looks good.
And I took a couple of others off, but this here,
Yeah.
the way it grows, it's kind of all growing into each
It's kind
other.
of, yeah, it's kind of congested, isn't it?
Could that, should I either chop it or wire it?
That's what the rocks are for.
Let's see. You've got 2 branches growing from the same spot here.
Oh, right,
So I would remove the one here,
This
which
one.
will help, yeah. That'll clean up that congestion a bit. So now
Whoa.
you can see
Oh, yeah,
it's a little bit cleaner in here.
yeah.
Then, as this gains vigor, you're going to get something sprout out here, and eventually you can kind of grow this branch out this direction. So for now, I wouldn't do anything with it. I would just let it gain health and vigor, and then that'll be a future chop that we'll do.
Okay.
Now you can get, I won't do it, but you can prune that one fairly flush with this tool. But this one you're going to need something that can get in there, a ball-shaped pruner,
So
which I have.
This deadwood too, like we cut this off, but should we keep going until
Yes,
it's
a little
alive?
bit, yeah.
And this.
Yes. So I'll get you a tool for that. And you can get in there and all your cuts, you can make them slightly concave. It's a good tool to have. The problem with these tools is they're fairly expensive and they're very difficult to sharpen because they're spherical. And the two cutting edges slightly overlap, but you can't have any gaps or anything, so you gotta be really careful sharpening them. It takes a bit of, I don't know. Yeah, so something like this, you can come right in, push in towards the tree, and then cut, and it'll remove that deadwood.
I'll do my best.
Yeah, so you want to keep the that's a wait. You want to just get the deadwood, so you going to come in a little, right about there, I'd say.
I'll
push
squeeze.
Push in towards the tree and squeeze. Like push really hard,
Okay,
as hard as you can push.
right here.
Yeah, push inwards. That's it. See how you're getting it out now?
Okay, and keep going.
If you can, just remove a little. You're starting to cut your callus a bit,
Yes.
which, I mean, that's okay too, but I think that's good enough. You can actually get that with your fingernail.
Yeah.
That's good.
And
That'll-
like, should this part be taken
yes,
off?
you should take that off. Be careful to keep your live tissue there. Don't cut into that.
With the same tool or the other?
Same tool. Yeah.
Okay. Oh,
Everyone's watching you.
no pressure.
Under the microscope.
Keep going.
I think that's good.
Okay.
Now these will thicken up, so all those will heal.
Yeah.
And that little Deadwood section, it'll get sealed over and it'll never be a problem.
And would that be the same with this one? I should do.
Yes, you
This-
should cut it back a little more
Do you
so
wanna
it's
do
flush.
one?
Otherwise, you'll always kind of have that little bump there.
Okay.
Eventually, it'll smooth
Like
out,
this
but
one?
Yeah, that was the same as this.
I'm going to suggest to you that you remove the top of the tree and keep these two. I think in the long term, you're going to like that solution. It shortens the tree. You're going to get taper from this thickness to your branches. It's the start of a canopy. You could even keep this third tree branch back here, but just remove that section and keep the 3 branches that'll form your canopy eventually. I think this, like, you've got a pretty ugly stub here anyway. And yeah, I think these are nice. So that's what I would do. I would keep this branch and I would cut it back. So it pulls on the pull, so you can just position your saw, then pull back. And it'll take a while, but you'll get it. This is how you get experience with tools. If someone shows you, like if I do all these cuts, you've gained no feel for the tools and the cutting of the trees. So when you do all the work yourself, it's like, well, next time you do it, you feel, that wasn't so hard, I can do this.
See what's under the soil here.
You'll notice it's not too much.
You have a few trees at home already?
Yeah, I have probably like 10 or 15 tropicals,
Oh, yeah.
and I've got maybe the same amount of party trees in the garage waiting to come out.
Oh.
Desperately waiting.
Yeah, just like everyone.
I know.
Right there.
I love this hobby though
branch is
because
kind
it
of off to the
just
side a bit.
gives me something to look forward to.
It's true.
And
think
the
it's
spring
got
just
good
couldn't come
dimensions.
soon enough.
Yeah. Yeah, just nibble away at it like that. Push down as you're cutting. And be careful of your fingers. Yeah. That's looking quite a bit better now.
Yeah.
You can take a little deeper.
Just makes it almost scoops it up.
Scoops it
Nice.
right out, and that way when you do
That's getting there. So you just kind of want to nibble away at it till you get it just
cadmium layer goes over top of it,
just right.
it's smooth right
Definitely this one, yes. I would shorten it to this one branch here. So I
To
would,
that one?
yeah. I would
Oh,
take-
cut this off?
Yeah,
Oh, with the other one? Or
sure, yeah. You can use the other pruners.
Where did it go?
Don't leave a bit of a stub.
Hang
You
on.
don't want to take it too far back.
Don't go away.
Okay. So, just leave like an 1/8 inch
I'm
or
taking
2 or
this
3
one off.
millimeters. Yes. You're gonna take, let me just show you.
Yeah.
So you're
Just
gonna
to get
take,
them at the right angle.
you're
Oh,
gonna
from
take-
underneath.
you're gonna
Done
go
that before, like you try and do a
and
cut,
take it off to about there.
Okay,
you
Be careful not to damage this one.
thank you.
slap and break a branch. No, I haven't done that one.
That's it. And then you can take it a little further back. I'd go a little further. Yeah. You can safely go within 3 or 4 millimeters.
You see, I'm the person.
That's perfect.
I'm the person who chops too much, so
I
I
see.
have to be really careful.
That is perfect.
Okay.
Now you've got leaves. See how these leaves are fanning outwards?
Yeah.
So I wouldn't prune it now. Wait till this branch goes stronger. If you prune it back to here, then you'll get this branch will continue to fan out this way.
Okay, this one here.
Yeah. So just leave it, let it gain
Okay.
strength, and eventually you'll cut it back.
And
then
they
you'll
can
get,
they can both stay, because
yes.
there's 2
yeah.
there, right?
Yes.
Okay,
And that'll create a nice flowing branch out this
Okay.
direction.
thanks, Nigel.
Yeah, it's looking really good.
Well, I haven't done much up here because I just thought I was going
That
to leave
looks
the
good.
canopy.
Your cut mark is really nice.
Oh, thanks, and then I cut this one off too.
Okay,
This-
yeah. Because there's 2 growing from one spot there, wasn't there?
So,
You could cut this one down. See how this one's going straight up? And
I was
you've got one
wondering about
fanning
that.
out here.
so cut it,
So I would take the top off that one.
okay.
Just
okay.
leave a bit of a stub for dieback
Okay.
and
So this would be my front, is that what? So
Let's see.
you think that, you said to do it for 3D?
generally, I would go more this direction because you've got a back branch here. The trunk kind of comes forward here.
Oh, okay.
Generally, you want
Oh,
trunks.
yes, that's what I was thinking, it was that way. yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You've got a bit of a wound here that'll heal over nicely. So you've just gotta be patient, that'll heal over. But yeah, I would start with cutting this one down, and then if something sprouts out lower, you can cut it back further
Okay.
in the future. But you always gotta make sure this new growth is strong, like that's too weak. When it gets up to about this stage, how many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So at least 6 leaves before you prune.
Okay.
So if you have a shoot come out down here, let it grow till it's got about 6 leaves, then you can cut this branch back and get it nice, more horizontal.
What would you do with this eventually?
You're gonna hope that a new branch develops down here, you can prune that vertical part off, and you'll get a nice flowing branch someday.
And leave these?
Yes, I would leave these. You can prune this vertical one off here.
Okay.
Just leave that one, the good one. That might even be your branch leader eventually, and you could prune it back.
Okay.
But eventually you'll get something grow more horizontally here. Right for damage. It was really bizarre. But that's where these would be, that's your root line or your soil line. Sorry, that's your soil line. And I think that's a really nice start. It's really thick here too, which is good. And kind of grow it on the angle if you like that.
Yeah.
Rather than more upright.
I think more this way
Yeah.
is cool.
So when you plant that in the pot, you're going to want to push it over to this side of the pot and have it like that. If you have it this way, it looks unbalanced, like it's going to tip over.
But this part's going to be exposed, or this is going to be under?
That will be exposed, which is okay, and it can be manipulated more later on or even now. These aerial roots are generally quite flexible, so you can tuck them in between roots like that if you want them to hug closer to the trunk.
I'm ready for repotting. By the way, I love the channel, Jay. I am subscribed. Proud
awesome.
subscriber.
Thank you so much.
And the reason you can get away with this is because you've got a good place to put the tree and you've got a lot of roots in here. Some people don't have as many.
Yeah, I've got 3 or 4 ficus all growing in that area, so.
And then the other root that's sticking down quite far is this one, which is quite a thick root. So it's going to have to be cut back to
the same amount of this.
that level, the same as this root here. So you're going to have to cut it right about here. And if that tool won't reach around,
Oh, do it all?
We always have use for soil.
That's easy. Easier that way, just dump it all
That's
in.
easy.
Yeah.
yeah, just mix it equally. Stir it all up with a nice consistent mixture. Always pour dust mask over the This stuff is a good year one.
What was the brown stuff called?
In that day, like if you water in the morning, by the end of the day, it'll be dropped. Before you put the soil in, they help stabilize your tree in the pot. There's a good stone.
Yeah. In the stone department.
So eventually you want to place this on here.
Okay.
And maybe a couple others to hold it in the pot. Take your time root pruning. You can have the tree in the air for a long time. These ficus grow aerial roots. As long as you keep the roots moist, there's no problem having them exposed. So you can take an hour to repot it if you want. So yeah, if they're drying out, just give it a mist and they'll be fine. Whatever you felt like.
Yeah, I really like how you put the lean.
Yeah.
That's nice.
That's how I do it.
It wasn't what we were expecting when it started, but sometimes the tree just tells you what it wants to do, right?
That's right. That's a great
The
attitude.
nice thing is it's hiding all the scars, the cut scars are on the back.
Very nice. Good job, guys.
Thanks.
Oh, that looks really good. You did a great job.
Do I need to be careful you don't tip the tree over? I would, if you can get more than rocks, just turn the whole circle. So you just,
Really nice.
Awesome, look at that, eh? Good cleaning up of that cut too. Say hi to YouTube.